Hello and welcome to this session, and in this session we shall continue our understanding of programming through pattern programming. That way, previously you had understood that these were the lines of code in C language using which we had printed a horizontal line of 5 stars. But then I hope you recollect me telling you that this definitely was not the best approach. So what really is the best way to write the same program in the top 3 languages in the most efficient manner? Let me explain. Even before I introduce to you the more efficient way of writing the code, what is more important for me to tell you is, why is this approach inefficient? Well, the approach is inefficient because I had asked you to print 5 stars, which is why you have 5 print commands in this program. What if I had asked you to print 10 stars? Then obviously you will have to bring in 5 more lines of code like this. Don't you think this is tedious and is inefficient? And just in case some of you think that no, it is not tedious, definitely we can proceed this way, then for such of my learners, my question is, what if I had asked you to print 100 stars? Then obviously you cannot be thinking of writing 100 print commands within the main function. Definitely then you would agree with me that indeed this happens to be an inefficient approach. So what really is the efficient approach? Well, if you would notice the lines of code carefully, don't you think that it is the same 5 lines of code that has been repeating? And whenever there is such repetitive activity that needs to be done in a program, then all that you need to be making use of is the loops. Yes, all the top programming languages, be it C, be it Java, be it Python, that way most of the programming languages support us with the concept of loops, using which we can make the repetitive activity more efficient. So how really can we make use of loops and how I can write the same program more efficiently? Let me explain. In as far as the loops are concerned, let me tell you that C language supports 3 types of loops: the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop. That way Java supports 4 types of loops. Well, it supports all the types of loops that C language supports, and then along with them it has an additional type of loop called the for each loop that it shall be supporting. And in as far as Python is concerned, it supports 2 loops, basically the for loop and the while loop. Well, that way most of the programming languages definitely support the concept of loops. Irrespective of the number of loops that a programming language supports, what is more important for you to understand is that whenever the concept of loops come in, then there are 3 aspects that definitely shall be associated with loops. The 3 aspects associated are, one is the initialization, the second is the condition checking, and the third is the incrementation or the decrementation. So what does really all of this mean, and how really can I make this program efficient by making use of loops? Let me explain. If I will have to make this program efficient, then I would not wish to have 5 print commands. Rather, I would wish to have just a single print command like this. But then you know that a single print command after all is going to be printing just 1 star on the output screen, but then I require 5 stars. So what I would better do is to execute this single statement 5 times. In other words, if I can repeatedly execute this one print command 5 times, then obviously I shall be getting 5 stars. But then how is it that I can be executing this one line 5 times? Well, that is possible by making use of loops. That way, I have already told you that C language supports 3 types of loops: the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop. For the time being, I shall be making use of the for loop. And I have already told you that be it whatever type of a loop, there are 3 aspects associated with it: the initialization, the condition, and the incrementation or decrementation. For the time being, forget about the decrementation. So these happen to be the 3 aspects, and in as far as the for loop is concerned, the initialization aspect shall be present at this place, the condition aspect shall be present at this place, and the incrementation shall be present at this place. I shall be speaking about decrementation moving forward when the time arrives, but then in as far as the for loop is concerned, this is the general rule or the general syntax in C language, and provided you give the right values for the initialization, condition and the incrementation, then definitely this one single print command can be made to execute 5 times and we shall be obtaining 5 stars on the screen. So how really should I set the value for the initialization, condition and the incrementation? Let me explain. Normally loops are associated with something called as the loop index variables. Well, this might sound to be a highly technical term, but then in programming, whenever loops are involved, that we make use of variables such as I or j or k to construct and set up the loops. That way, it's not a compulsion that you have to make use of only I or j or k. That way, you can make use of any variable name such as a or b or c or x or y or z. That way, whatever variable name that you would wish to give, you can definitely give. But then it's a normal programming practice that whenever loops are associated, that we make use of the variables I, j or k as the loop index variables. That way, for this program, I shall be making use of j as my loop index variable. What I mean to say is that in initialization, I shall have my loop index variable j. In the condition checking, I shall have my loop index variable j, and also in incrementation, I shall be having my loop index variable j. In other words, if I can set up the values for j appropriately, then definitely this one print command can be made to execute 5 times and we shall be able to get a horizontal line of 5 stars. So how really to set up this loop index variable j? Let me explain. I would set up j by initializing it to 1, and then I want this loop to keep on continuing as long as the value of j happens to be lesser than or equal to 5. Why am I saying 5? That's because I need 5 stars. And then as the loop progresses, I want j to increment by 1. Well, that way, if I can set up my for loop like this, then definitely I shall be getting 5 stars on the output screen. So how exactly does this execute? Well, the execution begins with the initialization of the value of j as 1. And then the control goes to the condition check. In the condition checking, we would check if the value of j is less than or equal to 5. Obviously, 1 is less than or equal to 5. Since the condition is satisfied, the body of the loop gets executed. In other words, the print command gets executed and we shall be having a single star printed on the screen. But then what is important for you to notice is that after the execution of this print command, the control does not come out of the loop. Rather, it goes to the next section, that is the incrementation section, and there you are telling to increment the value of j. It means that the value of j becomes 2, and then after that the control again comes to the condition checking. This time j less than or equal to 5 becomes 2 less than or equal to 5, and obviously 2 is less than 5, due to which the condition is satisfied and hence the control again enters the body of the loop. And now the same print command is getting executed the second time, and you know that when it is executed the second time, another star gets printed besides the previous star and the cursor moves ahead. But then even after this, the control does not go out of the loop. Rather, it goes to the incrementation, and this time due to the incrementation of j, the value of j becomes 3. And then the control goes to the condition check again, and when we check if j is less than or equal to 5, obviously 3 is less than 5, and since the condition is satisfied, that again the same printf command gets executed, and this time it is going to print the third star and then move the cursor ahead. And then the control does not come out of the loop. Rather, by now you have understood that it again gets back to the incrementation. The value of j becomes 4, and then in the condition j less than or equal to 5 becomes 4 less than or equal to 5, and you know that obviously 4 is less than 5, and since the condition is satisfied, that the control re-enters the body of the loop, executing the same print command the fourth time, which shall result in the printing of the fourth star. And then the control obviously doesn't come out of the loop. Rather, it again gets back to the incrementation section, making the value of j as 5. Now in the condition checking, j less than or equal to 5 becomes 5 less than or equal to 5. Obviously 5 is not less than 5, but definitely it is equal to 5. In other words, the condition again evaluates to true, due to which we again enter the body of the loop, and now the print command is getting executed the fifth time, printing the fifth star. But then after printing the fifth star, the control does not come out of the loop. Well, you know that after executing the body of the loop, the control as normal goes to the incrementation section, wherein the value of j is again incremented and it becomes 6. And now when the control goes to the condition checking, that j less than or equal to 5 becomes 6 less than or equal to 5. Well, you know that 6 is neither less than 5 nor is equal to 5. In other words, mathematically this is wrong, and hence the condition fails. And whenever the condition fails, that is when the control comes out of the loop. Well, by the time the control comes out of the loop, you can see that already we have got the desired output on the screen. So I'm sure that through this example you have been able to understand as to how a single printf command can be made to execute multiple times by setting up an appropriate loop around it. Well, in this loop I have made use of the loop index variable j. That way, instead of j, if I would have I, even then I would have still got the same output. Instead of I, if I had made use of the variable a, even then I would have still got the same output. But then it's a normal industry practice that we make use of the variables I or j or k as the loop index variables, and in this program I have made use of j as my loop index variable. So I'm sure that now you have been able to understand the power of loops and how repetitive activities can be coded in a simple manner by enclosing that repetitive activity inside a loop. Well, printing star was the repetitive activity in this case, and that is precisely the reason as to why I have enclosed that printing statement inside the loop. Anyway, now that you have understood the power of the for loop, how really can I make use of the same loop and write the program in Java? How can I really write it in Python? Let me explain. In as far as Java is concerned, you know that this was the program that we had previously executed to get the output, but then I had told you that this is inefficient because the print activity is being repeatedly done on different lines over here. I wouldn't wish to have these 5 print commands. Rather, I would just have one print command in Java, but then you know that I need to be enclosing it within the loop. Again, I shall be making use of the for loop, and the moment I make use of any loop, you know that there are 3 aspects associated: the initialization, the condition check, and the incrementation. Well, you also know that loops are associated with the loop index variable, and again I shall be making use of j as my loop index variable, and you know that I need to initialize j to 1, and I want the loop to keep on continuing as long as j happens to be less than 5 or equal to 5, and each time as I progress through the looping, that the value of j has to get incremented by 1. Well, you completely understand as to how the loop progresses even in this case, and obviously upon executing this program I shall be obtaining the required result. I'm sure you have been able to understand this efficient program in Java as well. But then what is the story in Python? Let me explain. In as far as Python is concerned, you know that these were the 5 print commands in Python that we had previously used to get the required result. But then this is inefficient, so I will just use one print command, but then you know that I will have to enclose it within a loop. Again, I shall be making use of the for loop, but then the for loop in Python is slightly different. This is the way that I will have to code the for loop in Python. Yes, for j in range from 1 to 5. And upon execution, this is what is the result. Oops, you can see that only 4 stars are printed, not 5 stars. Why is it so? That's because in Python the rule is slightly different. What I mean to say is that in Python, when you will set up a loop like this saying that j should be in the range from 1 to 5, then when j is 1, the print command gets executed. Again it shall loop, and when j becomes 2 as well, the print command gets executed. Similarly, when j is 3 and j is 4 as well, that the print command gets executed. But then when the upper limit of j5 is reached, then the print command actually does not get executed. That is the reason why we have got only 4 stars. Well, that way, if you want 5 stars, then all that you have to do is to change your upper limit from 5 to 6. The moment you do that, then when the value of j is 5 as well, then the fifth star gets printed, and then when the value of j becomes 6, that it stops execution. Obviously, the for loop in Python is slightly different when compared to the way it works in C and Java, but then these are certain nuances associated with that particular programming language. The inventor of Python, for some reason, has made the for loop such that you need to always give one additional number extra to the upper limit so that you can get the required result. Well, if you really need to understand all of this in great detail, then you need to go through my course on Python, and definitely all such doubts of yours shall be completely clarified. But at this point in time, only thing that I wanted to tell you is that the for loop rule in Python is slightly different, wherein you can give the initial condition as 1, but then whatever is the number of times that the loop has to be repeating, that you need to give one extra number in order to obtain the required result. Well, I'm sure that in this session you have indeed been able to understand as to how you can efficiently write the program in C by making use of the loop, how you can efficiently write the program in Java by making use of the for loop, and also how you can be writing the same program in Python by making use of the for loop. Just that in Python the syntax is slightly different. But all said and done, this session definitely has introduced you to the power of loops, and that as a programmer you should be really well versed in making use of loops to make your programs more efficient. In my next session, I shall be achieving the same by making use of the other types of loops, such as the while loop, the do while loop, and so on. And also in my next session, I shall be introducing you to the deeper aspects associated with programming. So if you really want to transform yourself as an efficient programmer, then all that you need to do is to continue watching this video series. Thanks for watching. Hope this session was informative. Let's meet again in my next session.